Okay, how's everybody? All good? Great. Well, let me start showing something here. So, what we're going to be doing today on our week 6, we're going to be talking about two topics that I initially planned for last week, but that's okay. We will cover them today. Number one topic, really, of the night will be routing. Routing is the URL mechanism that MVC makes available to us, so we can work with controllers, we can work with actions. So we're going to start with that. There are some exercises, some lecturing that I'll be doing as well, but mostly very hands-on, very code-driven. Then, once we're done with routing, we're going to talk about assignment 101. So I'm going to go through the class alphabetically, and I'll sit down with each one of you. I'll have a look at what you have done for assignment 1. I may ask some questions. I may ask you to show me some things that you have done. And then, so that will be the next part. While I do that individually, there is an exercise that you're going to do, the rest of you will be doing as I go through 101 with each one of you, okay? So that's assignment 2, and again, you're going to be doing some activities there. And then, once I'm done with that, which, to be quite honest, I don't know how long that will take, but let's see how things will flow. We will have a chance to talk about partial views. Partial views is something that is required for assignment number 2. So I'm hoping that we can squeeze in some time towards the end to talk about partial view. And it's not a very hard topic. It's quite simple, easy to understand, but it's an important one. Okay? Okay. So, what are your expectations for what you're going to be talking about today? I mean, you had a chance to submit your questions. Some of you submitted. Some of you did not. That's fine. You may want to have your questions open throughout the class today so we can address the questions. But again, the question is, what's your expectations about what you're going to be covering today, you're going to be talking about today? Anything you'd like to share before I get started? Anything? Crickets? Okay, that's okay. If you don't have too many expectations, that's fine. We're just going to navigate through that, through the content. I'm still coughing a little bit, so like I coughed a lot in the other class, and people were actually worried about. So and it comes all of a sudden, so if I start coughing, I'm not going to die, as I said before. So, but I just have to cough it out. Okay. Routing and partial views. To be quite honest, those topics, they are not related to each other. Okay, they are two different things. We're gonna focus mostly on routing because I tend to think that it's one of the most important topics. You need to get a good hang of it, and my goal for today is really for you to live today knowing routing inside and out. We're going to have a second chance to visit routing again in what I call the third phase of this course later on in a few weeks. But today I would like you to get a good understanding about routing and the options that are available, when you're going to use one, when you're going to use another one. I have a few quizzes, not graded, but few quizzes that we're going to be doing together today about routing. Okay? And also partial view. So, objectives of the day today. We're gonna define our routing rules. you're going to understand what are rules. If you have done the exercise, actually, even on chapter 8, you have done already a bit of routing because we have not used the default routing in our sports store. Example, we are using a custom routing rules, okay? So we're going to be, again, talking a lot about routing rules and how to create a partial view as well, more towards the end. Our old diagram here, this is where we're going to be talking about the most today. Sorry, not here, here. Router and controller, how they communicate, how router gets configured, okay? So we're going to be talking mostly here and a little bit about partial views as well. So again, routing rules. You're going to see this name router, routing rules. You're going to see here a lot about those terms. And as I mentioned last time, we're going to also be talking about partial views, depending on how time goes today. Routing is handled a little bit on chapter 8 and quite a lot on chapter 9. So that's why I mentioned here chapter 8 and 9, because again, you see a little bit in chapter 8, and then you see it again in chapter 9, a little bit more expanded, okay? But what we're going to be talking about is on those two chapters, but we're going to focus mostly on chapter 9 here. As I mentioned before, keep your questions close by so you can make sure that we address them as we go along, okay? Routing. So before I get to details of that, what do you understand about that? I mean, what comes to mind when you hear the word routing in context to our course? Again, the first thing that you think of, just if you want to just blast it out, I'm here to listen. What can you tell me about routing in MVC, in the context of MVC, based on the things that you have done as examples from the sports store? Any brave one?
I saw you used it in the videos for the navigation.
Okay,
right?
Navigation, yeah. It helps with navigation, that's true. With navigating to different URLs in our websites, in our web application. Okay. You can use the default one, or you can use a custom one. It's up to you, but now we're going to start using a custom one so you can understand the different elements of the routing mechanism. Okay, so again, we're going to be focusing here and the connection of the router, in the connection between the router and the controller, how they work together, because they are independent components, but they fit together. The reason why we have routing is because we need to know which controller, which action we need to activate. Okay?
Like in party invites, we use the default router, so it used the index right away.
We use what?
The default router.
Default router, yeah. So
It goes to the index right away.
to the index. So index is what again?
It opens the index as the default.
Default, yeah. So define what is index. Index is.
The view was the index.
Okay. So let's put the correct word in place. We have an index view, but for the sake of controller, what is index? Action. So for the sake of a controller, index is action. Now, before we have the action, we need to know what. What is something that comes, I would say, prior to the action. First we get to da-da-da, then we get to the action. First we get to what? From the routing mechanism, first we get to the controller, then we get to the action. Okay, so and you're going to see this a lot today, a lot, with examples, quizzes. Again, we're going to be practicing this a lot. I highly recommend that you use this time well to understand this, because I'm going to really take my time here to help you understand this, okay? Okay, so, para invites, very first example. If you recall on the startup class, we have this configure method. And in part invites, we are using use MVC with default routes. We are using this method, okay? There's a method also called use MVC, and it stops right here, okay? So we have this as well. But in part invites, we are using MVC with a default routing set of rules. What does that mean? What is the default routing? Again, we just mentioned this a little bit. What is the default controller when we are using this? What is the name of the default controller? Home. What is the name of the default action? Index. Okay, so that's that simple. When you are using the default routing of MVC, you are initially calling the home controller in the index action. Home controller, index action, those are the default ones. Now, we're going to move beyond this. We're going to start to use another strategy that will allow us way more flexibility in how we define those things. Now, first let's understand a little bit about the URL, a basic URL structure, okay? So usually, when you run your application, you're going to run it, and it shows localhost and then a port number. To be quite honest, that's not super important for what we are doing here. This part, which is the host part, it doesn't mean too much for the application. This is where the application, if you don't consider this part, this is the root of the website, okay? You can call it website home, website root. This is the first page view that you load when you load the site or the location. So forget about that for a second. Now, when you run yours, you're going to see something like localhost, and then semicolon, and then a port number. And this is just the website running in your local environment. That's the reason why you see localhost there. But the routing mechanism really starts from this point on, okay? So from here on, this is what the routing mechanism is interested, okay? It's not so much interested about this. This is just the root of the site. Again, routing mechanism is looking into this part of the URL, okay? Now, we have those slashes. So after each slash, we have a segment in the URL, okay? So in this case here, we have 3 segments. We have home, index, 3. Traditionally, in a more traditional web site, you can think of those as folders. Usually, if you look at the website, you're going to see a folder called home, and then a folder called index, and then potentially, in this case, this is dynamic, but potentially a file that's called something right here. In our case, we don't have necessarily folders in MVC. This is not a home folder in MVC. What is this home in MVC? If we're using the default routing, this is a controller. What is the index? The action. And in our case, we have number 3 here, which can mean different things. It's available for us. We can put it in ID, and that ID gets transferred over to our action as a parameter. Listen to that. And again, you're going to hear that a lot of times. So this little part here, it can be passed to the index action as a parameter. Let's say a page ID, which is an integer, okay? But again, for the sake of where we are at now, just understand that we have different segments as you see the URLs. You have first, second, third, and so on. You can have as many as our application wants, demands, however it has been architectured, okay? Now, again, let's just recap a little bit and talk more a little bit about the default routing. We are not in the custom environment yet. We are using MVC default router, okay? So, if you look at the URL like this, if we are talking about default routing, what is the controller name? Home. What is the action? Index, okay? So default routing in a URL that does not have any segments, okay? The controller is home and the action is index, okay? Remember, what is an action? An action is a method. Actually, let me rephrase that. An action is a public method inside a controller, okay? So it's a public method inside a controller. Public methods inside the controllers, they are called actions. Again, just for the sake of practicing here, still using default controller here. What is the controller in this case? Home. And what is the action? So this one, in the previous one, using default controller, they are calling the same thing. They are always calling the home, always calling the action, the index action. Okay? What about this case? If we are using default controller or the default routing, what is the controller name? Controller name is admin. What is the action? Index. If it's not listed there, it means that it's the default action. The default does not only work if the controller is home. If the controller is any other controller, card controller, a product controller, whatever controller it is, the default, the action, if we are using default routing, will be always index, okay? Now we can change that, and you're going to see in a bit how we change that. But using the default routing, again, this is about default routing. This is a controller, and whatever comes after that is the action, but in this case we don't have, so we are using the default action, which is index.
What if we have more than one controller? How will you know which one is the default controller?
Okay, anybody wants to help with that? What if we have more than one controller?
And it's not named by home. It's like admin and something else.
Well, so here's the thing. If we are using the default routing, we need a home. We need a home controller. Now, your question is, how does it identify?
If there is a home, that's the default controller.
Yeah.
If it's admin only, there's no home.
There is no home? Okay. So if you don't have a home controller, then if you try to access this site without this, what will happen? It will try to find, okay, where's the home controller? There's no home controller, so you're going to get a 404 error because it won't find. It's looking for a home, but it can't find. So again, like this, if we don't have a home controller and you type just the root of the application, you're going to get an error because it will try to find controller and it doesn't find it. Okay? Okay. Again, using default routing, what is the controller here? Admin. And what is the action? List clients. Now it's specified there, so now it will look for that. Now, again, what will happen? What happens if there is no list clients action inside admin? We're gonna get an error. No, 144 error. Page resource not found. Because in the end, browser will look at this as a resource. When it tries to get it, does anything come back? Yes, great. No, 404. It could not find that resource. Okay? So again, using default routing, this is the controller, this is the action. By the way, I have, as usual, sometimes I forget to mention, but I have Padlet open as well, so if you don't want to ask verbally, you can always ask via Padlet, okay? Okay. Now, let's move away from the default routing, okay? Let's move away from there. So, you see, in our configure methods inside the startup, we are no longer using use MVC with default routes. We are using just use MVC. Use MVC will provide the MVC service to the application, but we have to provide the mapping rules, the routing rules, which is called a map. So we have to provide that explicitly, okay? Otherwise, if we just say app.useMVC and we close parentheses here, semicolon, yes, we provide MVC, but when we try to run, it won't find any rules, so it won't show anything, okay? Okay. There are a lot of details when you start to manipulate and see what this is doing. I'm going to focus on smaller parts first, and then we're going to expand from that, okay? So when we say use MVC, we define a collection of routes, a collection of rules that if the URL looks like this, do X. If the URL looks like that, do Y. Now, there are also many different ways to define that. Here, this is just one example. One example that actually, this is how the default routing would be if we would explicitly create it. See, look at this template. The name is not super important. You're going to see how we use that later. So you can actually leave just blank for now. Don't worry about the name property. But templates, and there's another one called default. Template is very important because what it's doing here, what it's showing here, is that this is a template of how the URLs of your application will look like. Now, let's break this down a little bit there by looking at it. So what it says here is that, remember, segments. After each slash, we have a segment, okay? So how many segments we have here? 3 segments, okay? So what this template is saying, this is a template of a URL. What this template is saying is that when you have site.com / whatever comes after the / will be a controller. Controller is the first parameter here, the first variable in our templates. The second one is the action. And the third one is this ID. Now, look at this. It says controller equals to home. Does it mean that every single controller in our application will be called home? No. You know what this is? Who can give me a wild guess of what this is?
Default.
It's a default. So this is how we defined the default controller. If there is no controller in the URL, home is the default. It could be something else, like in the sports store. Sports store, if you recall, we just have one controller which is not called home. It's called, I think, if I'm not mistaken, product. Okay? So controller equals to something here. It's just saying that if there are no controllers in the URL, assume that home is the controller. The same goes to action. If there is no action segment here, the default will be whatever you put here. In this case, index. And then we have this third guy over there. If we don't put this question mark, the third guy will be mandatory. We're going to have to add a number there, a parameter there. Yep.
So now that we named the default, can we use like .default in the future, or can we use the word?
This you can use default. You can use this default name is just the name of this rule. It has no bearing on what's in the URL.
It doesn't encompass the template, or?
It encompasses, yes, but this name here can be used later when we are building URLs within our system. So right now, to be quite honest, I would ignore this name property here because it's not relevant for what we're going to be seeing today. Later, most likely in our third phase of our course, we're going to have a look at this. But for the sake of today, actually, you're going to see in a second that for the sake of today, we can leave them all, the name all blank, all null. It doesn't matter for us right now. And again, I want really to focus on what's most important right now. This is not super important. We're going to handle that a little bit later. Yes, this is a name that will define this, but for other uses, okay? Okay, so again here, back to the ID. This question mark makes this parameter, makes this segment optional. So if you provide, great. Now we have an ID. If you don't, that's okay, because it's optional. You see, the question mark means that this is optional. So as you see, they are inside curly braces, which means that this is just a placeholder. It's just waiting for something to fit there. And then what we're going to be doing a lot today is we're going to be looking at URLs and let's say, does this URL fit this rule? Does this URL fit this rule? If it does, what is the controller? What is the action? What are the parameters? Okay? Okay. Why we're using ID in the third one? Okay. So it's there for you if you want to use. It can be used for paging. Let's say that your action is providing a list of students, a list of products. Maybe this ID will say /3. It could be that we are on page number 3. It could be that I want only product number 3, student number 3. It's up to you to decide how you're going to use this. Because we have a question mark, we don't have to use it. It's just there. In a way, it's there just in case. Just in case, if you want to use it. If you don't, that's fine. You don't need to. So again, it's optional. Okay? You can use for whatever purpose you want. Remember, here's one thing. The routing is just about breaking down the elements. It does know what will happen once it breaks down. Whose job is to figure out what will happen with this? Whose job is that? Who is the one that knows what to do with that URL after it's broken in pieces? I know the controller. I know the index. So again, who takes care of knowing what to perform there? Who's the one? Who has this knowledge, has this...
The one who's developing?
Yeah, the person developing, yeah, but specifically in the codes. Who knows how to output to this URL? The controller, the action, they're the ones that know. So routing is a little bit dumb. It just knows one thing. How do I break this down into smaller chunks? Once it breaks down, it knows which controller, it knows which action, and that's up to them now to see what they're going to do. They're going to do with this ID. The router, it doesn't know what's that ID all about. The logic that we wrote in our action is the one that will figure out what to do if anything. I mean, again, it's optional. You don't have to. Once we start to have a look at some concrete examples, it may become a little bit more clear. Okay? Okay, so look at this now. It's almost the same, but now who's the default controller? Products. Who's the default action? Lists. And then we have an optional ID at the end here. This is how Sports Store was created in the first, in chapter 8, okay? It's using this default routing mechanism, okay? Let's have a look at that view over there. Check it out here. Okay. Okay, so I really like the videos from this guy, he's very good at breaking down some complexity here. What he's going to talk about is, in a way, what I just mentioned, in his own words, in a different style, in a different approach. Hopefully that will click even better for you. I'm not going to go through the entire 12 minutes. We're gonna watch this up to 7 or 8 minutes. Let's see if I can get the volume here.
Let's look at an example. Consider this incoming request URL, http://rules defined in our application. Let's look at an example. Consider this incoming.
So, yeah, let's go there.
Defined in our application. Let's look at an example. Consider this incoming request URL, http://localhost:1234. That is the server that's hosting our web application. In our case, it's the localhost. And then we have two path segments, /home/index. So the first path segment, /home, is mapped to the home controller class in our application. And then the second path segment, index, it is mapped to the index action method within our home controller. Now let's look at another example. Notice in this URL, we have three path segments, /home/details/1. As usual, the first path segment, /home, is mapped to the home controller, and the second path segment, /details, is mapped to the details action method within our home controller. And the third path segment, the value 1, that is mapped to the ID parameter on the details action method. So this mapping is done by the routing rules defined in our application. Let's look at this in action. Notice within our home controller class, we have two public methods, index and details. At the moment, this details action method is retrieving employee details whose ID is 1. At the moment, we have hard-coded the employee ID to 1. So instead of hard-coding it, let's pass the value as a parameter. I'm going to name the parameter ID, and we're going to use this ID parameter here instead of hard-coding it. With all these changes in place, let's run our application. Notice we see the list of employees. Now we know it is this index action method within our home controller that is returning us the list of employees. Now if we take a look at the URL, within the URL we don't have those path segments, /home/index. So the obvious question that comes to our mind is, how is this index action method within our home controller executed when we navigate to the root application URL? We'll answer that question in just a bit. For now, let's navigate to /home/details/1. Notice we see the details of the employee whose ID is 1. Now let's change the ID to 2, and we see that employee details. So this route /home/details/2 is mapped to the details action method within our home controller, and the value 2 is mapped to this ID parameter. This mapping is done by the routing rules configured within our application. But if you recollect from our previous videos in this series, we have not explicitly configured any routing rules within our application. So the obvious question that comes to our mind is, how are the routes mapped to these controller action methods? Well, if we take a look at this startup.cs file, we have this configure method. If you recollect from our previous videos in this series, it is this method that we use to set up a request processing pipeline for our application. Within this method, we are calling this extension method use MVC with default route. As you can see from the IntelliSense, this method adds MVC support to our application.
Okay, so just want to highlight this. This is using the default route, and it's just explain that. And you see, when you move the mouse over, it shows, maybe it's too small for the ones that are far away, but you can open the codes and you can see that by yourself. It shows that this default route is controller equals to home, action, default action equals to index, / optional ID. So that's what this is giving to us. Just this rule, just that. But because we have this rule, we can have any controller, any action, it will behave like the templates, okay? It does not mean that we can only have the home controller, okay?
instance request processing pipeline with a default route. We'll look at that default route in just a bit. For now, let's comment the call to this method. Without this method, our application does not have MVC support. But there is another way to add MVC support, and that is by using useMVC method. The difference between these two methods is, as the name implies, this useMVC with default route method adds MVC support with the default route configured, whereas this method only adds MVC support. It does not configure any default routes for our application. So now, with this setup in place, let's run our application and see what happens. Notice when we refresh the page, we see 404 error. This is because at the moment within our application, we don't have any routes configured. As a result, our application does not know how to handle this incoming URL. So let's configure routes for our application. We do that by using this useMVC method. Notice from the IntelliSense, this method has got two overloaded versions. We're going to use this overloaded version that takes action of iRouteBuilder as a parameter. I'm going to name it routes. Notice from the IntelliSense, the type of this routes parameter is iRouteBuilder, and this iRouteBuilder interface has got mapRoute method, which we use to configure the routes for our application. Again, as you can see from the IntelliSense, every route has got a name and a template. I'm going to name our first route default. The second parameter is the template. The template specifies the URL pattern of the route. Now, if we take a look at this URL, we want to map this first path segment in the URL to a controller in our application. So within double quotes, I include a pair of curly braces and then specify controller. The second path segment in the URL is the name of the action method. And notice the action method and the controller are separated with a /. So I'm going to include a / here, and then another pair of curly braces, and then the word action. The next segment in the URL is this value 2. Again, notice between this value 2 and the action method name, we have a /. So I'm going to include another / here, followed by that, another pair of curly braces, and then name the parameter ID. With this route template in place, let's save our changes and take a look at the browser. Notice now when we reload the page, we see employee details who.
Okay, let me just step back here for a second. See, the new routing rule that he has created, based on this one here, what is the default controller?
Home controller?
No, we did not do equal to home.
There isn't a default.
There is no default. Because here's the thing. If we use MVC, there's no rule applied at all. Then whatever I define here are the rules that will be applied to our application from now on. If I don't define a default for the controller, like I'm not defining here, this URL is very rigid. If by using that rule there, I could not access the root of my website because it requires a controller, it requires an action, it requires an ID. There's no optional, there's no default, okay? Usually we have defaults, and again, it's just that he's explaining, he'll be covering that. But I'm just saying that this can happen, but we did not specify a default. We did not specify a default for action either. So they are mandatory. If you don't provide that, you're going to get 404. You're just going to get 404 here. Okay. Let me return there. Okay, so let me have a look. Let me open our, look here. Okay, I'm going to open our application This is sports store, but with the additional rules already in place. Okay, so I'm going to open startup here. Okay, so let's have a look at this here. Well, first of all, as I mentioned to you, at this point in time, name is not that important, so I can just set the name as null. I'm using this style of, I'm using here this additional property called defaults, okay? So let's understand each one of those. Let's see what is happening with each one of those rules. Again, if you have done the exercise, you have gone through this. This should not be the first time you see this. So the first, by what you're looking at here, even as I did not fully explain this yet, not the defaults here. With this rule, what is the controller? Sorry, let me rephrase it. What's the default controller? Product is the default controller. In action is list. Okay? So what you see here is just a pattern. Okay? It's just a pattern. This pattern is saying that if you provide a URL that matches this template, okay, this is what will happen. You're going to access product controller in action lists. If the URL matches this, okay? Now, can you think of one example of a URL that could match this rule? Forget about what will happen afterwards. Let's forget about whether or not the application has controllers, has actions. Let's just focus on the routing. Just focus on the routing here. Give me one example of a URL that could fit there. Actually, no, let's make it easier for you to be able to contribute on that. Go to Padlets, open Padlets, and type one example of that would match this rule there. So again, let's do that. I'll keep it open, this code. Have a look at this. Open Padlets, type one or two examples that would fit this pattern. A URL that could fit that. Okay? And then let's look at what you came up with. Let's have a look here. Let's see if I can reduce this to put them side by side. Okay, so let's have a look there. Let's start here. Localhost dash products dash list. Would this match this?
No,
Why not?
because list here is the action.
Okay,
Maybe there is asking for the page, the ID.
okay. That's towards that direction. That's fine. Let's hold that thought there. This one here, /chess/page1. Would this match?
No, because it needs int, not the string.
What is int?
I mean, it needs a number,
Where?
and after the slash.
Not after the slash. After the slash, look at what it needs. It needs, because see, page is not inside the braces. So it needs the term page there. What is variable here is the first segment in this little part here, but /page is necessary to fit this rule. So this is a match because chess becomes a category, page is the fixed element, and product page becomes 1. Okay, so this is a match. Let's look at a few more here. Okay, so product. So in this case, let's say product will match category, but list doesn't match here because we don't have page. When you don't have curly braces defining a segment, it needs this name. It needs page. It needs whatever you put there to be able to match. Okay, let's see a few more. So this does not match. This one here. /winter, so winter is the category. Products, again, we don't have page here. Now you know that you need page, okay? And the last part is an integer that goes right after that. This one here, chess, category, page, yep, and then 1, page 1. So product page would be 1. This one does not. This one, again, the same problem. We have category there, which is product, but again, the second segment, we don't have a match for that. Okay, great. So think for that one. Anything that is not clear on that first rule there, have a look at that once again. You see, it's not defining the controller keyword here in the URL because it's defining here. Even though it's not specified here in the URL, the controller, but it says, if the URL matches this pattern, the controller will be products, the action will be list, and then category and page, in product page, they become what from that action? Category and product page are what for the list action? Parameters. They become parameters. They become the input parameters of that method, of the list method. Let's have a look at the controller here. So if you go to controller, this is the product controller, so I'm going to go to products. And this is the list. You see, we have the list action, which has a string category and a product page. Let me tell you this, for assignment number 2, you're going to do something very similar when you click in a recipe and you view the recipe. When you click the recipe, the ID of that recipe needs to be sent to the view details action. Okay? So you're going to have in the recipe view or view recipe, you're going to have to expect a parameter that you can call recipe ID, and then you get the recipe ID, you load the data that matches that recipe ID, and you send that to the view. Just a quick tip for assignment number 2. This will be important because you may get stuck on that particular one. But in any case, we have the list action, we have a string, which is category, and a product page, which is the number, all coming from the URL, all given to us by the routing mechanism. Okay? Let's go back there. Anything there that does not make sense? Just the first one. We did not progress yet. The first one. Any questions come to mind? From what you see there. About matching. Yeah, at first it's confusing, but as we practice this will become second nature. Let's see if there's anything there. Okay. Okay. Let's move on. Let's have a look at the second rule there. I want to dissect each one of those rules for us, so we understand them and we understand what's going on here. The second one. Look at the templates. In a way, it's similar to this, isn't it? What is the difference that we see there?
Doesn't have a category.
It doesn't have a category. Huh? doesn't have a category. So this one here, let's think about now the application itself. When will this one be used? In which moments in our sports store is this one might be used? When you're filtering results and you're trying to page. You try to page. You load the first page. You load the first page of, let's say, if you put slash chess. Actually, that's a good point here. Let me see.
Do the next one.
Yeah, slash chess will not match the first one.
Will be the third.
Yeah, exactly. So we get there in a second. But slash chess, because we are missing page, so it does not match that one. Slash chess will match another one down the road here. Now, let's have a look at the second one. We have page, product page. So, give me just a few that could match that one. Slash what? Slash page 1, page 2, page 3. Just slash page could also match. Why slash page could match there? Because we have a default value for page number. The first page of the, because now we are no longer talking about category. This is the general repository of products, okay? So product page becomes 1 if we don't pass it over here. If we just say slash page, it would fit this one here. Would that actually now? Yeah, it would because now we have a default here. Correct. So it would fit. Okay. Again, when you see an element that is not inside curly braces, it means that it should be present in the URL. Actually, you know what? Let's give this a try. This is the final product of chapter 9. Okay, so we have when it first loads, it loads all products. Now, I can say chess. Now, see, look at the URL. It's coming and it's matching this one here. It has the chess, page 1. Now, if we go to home again, and if we start to page, see page 2, page 3, now we are matching the second one. So you may think, but Anderson, what if the URL matches more than one? It could happen. I'm not sure that here it would, but it could. What if the same URL match multiple? Who can guess what will happen if it matches multiple rules? Which rule will be the one? All of them? The last one? The one in the middle? The first one? An error? Again, the question is, if I have a URL that we potentially have more than one rule that would match that, it would be a match, what will happen?
It's going to show the first one more. It's going to match it.
It's going to show the first one. It hit, as soon as we have a match, it processes that match, and it doesn't carry on. It stops right there, okay? Okay, so let me have a look at the application here. So we have the general paging, which matches this one, and then we have the specific pages which match when we filter by the category, okay? So those are the two scenarios over there. Let's have a look at the third one. The third one. So we just have a very simple template. So if I say slash Ederson, it would match this one. Okay. If I say just slash anything, it will match this one here. Okay. And then controller is product, action is list, product page is 1. Okay. This is what happens. Let me see if we have a situation like that, because actually, as soon as we click, I think that the filtering is already doing this for us. So yeah, it goes to page number 1 right away. Have a question? Go ahead. You have a question? Oh, I thought you. Okay. Okay, so template category. Okay. Slash whatever it is, okay? The fourth one.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why you had to add the product page equals to 1?
Okay.
Because in the parameter,
Yeah.
it's already declared as default product page. Yeah, here. If here is not mentioned as a default one, then yeah, maybe you don't have to do it here as well. Because here the first one works well, the first route.
Let's try. Let's try. Let's see this. If I go there and if I just do something like this, chess. If I just do chess, it filters chess. Let me do soccer here. See, it's filtering. Just when I say just soccer, it comes and finds this one here. Now, let's try this. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so let's do chess. Yeah. So that particular one is not necessary because, as you're saying, we have a default value in our parameter list. Okay, good point. Good point. Okay, so the last one. The last one, what is this case here? Which case this is handling?
Anything else
Anything else like what?
that doesn't have necessarily a category or page specifications?
So this case, again, which URL will match this one? Just the?
Just the name of the website.
Just the root. Just the root site. That's it. This is just, in a way, it's giving you the default situation when you access the route, the root of the site, okay? No empty template like this, no URL, control will be product, action will be list, and product page will be 1. But I think that we can fit this in the same situation as the previous one because we have the list being the parameter there. And then product page becomes optional. Okay, and then we have the third one, the fifth one. Slash controller, slash action, slash ID. So the last one becomes almost like, it's not so much the default because this is really the default from the root, but this one here, in a way, it gives you the flexibility to use any controller slash if you have other controllers, it will fit this bill here. See, it doesn't even has defaults because whatever controller you call, it will fit here. Whatever action you put there, it will fit here. And if you have an ID, it will come down here. So let me see one thing here. Yeah, in this case, again, this has been made optional. It's almost like, in case nothing else fits, try to fit in this one.
But like nothing will, so with this, nothing will be, no parameters would be passed to anything, right? So this is just like the default to just show something?
The default to show something? What do you mean by the default? No URL?
Yeah.
No URL is this one here.
Yeah.
This is not, Okay, this is one rule, this is another one, okay? This is not the same thing. Those are two different rules, just written in a slightly different way, but this is one rule and this is another one. So it's like this is the fourth rule, this is the fifth rule. You see, we have a semicolon at the end. So this is independent from this one here.
So with the fourth rule, would that just mean that if there's no URL, it's still defaulted to show the kind of like
this product?
one?
Yeah, there could be other ways to write this. You know, I could very much.
So
Well,
isn't this like catching a 404?
Which one?
Like with using the template with nothing in it, you're kind of like preventing an exception from.
Well, the only exception that this is really preventing is that the root of your site does something. And this is what the root is doing. It's calling the product controller, it's calling the action list, and it's sending one to the product page. So this is your root. Do you understand when I say root of the site? It's just the slash without anything. It's the root of the site. This handles the root, and what this will give me is that, what if I have an URL that says /admin/products? No other rule will meet that, but this one will. Admin becomes a controller, action becomes product or product list, and then ID is optional. Go ahead.
Does 4 and 5 do the same thing?
Sorry?
Does 4 and 5 do the same thing?
No, they don't. For, again, which URL for is handling? What is the only URL that for is handling? This one here. Only the root. Only slash. mysite.com. Just that, because the template is empty. It means that there is nothing in the URL. Okay? The fifth one, the first two parameter is controller, the second one is the action, the third one, optionally, is an ID. But again, it will only fall in this one here if it did fall already in any one of the other at the top. Okay? If it found already a batching rule before, it will never reach this one here. Again, as you get used to it, this will become more familiar. Let's do one thing. Let's go for 5 minutes. Once we get back, I'll have a few quizzes about this. We're going to practice that, and we're going to get a better hang of it, okay? Let's go there, 5 minutes.
question about the video.
Yeah.
So when I read this tab, the application list,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's not showing like the list like 1, 2, 3. You did it on the video. I don't know how.
It's not showing.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you show me that again?
Which one?
Where?
The video?
Yeah. In which step of the video is that one? Okay, part 10. Okay. Okay. I can look closely because on top of my mind I don't remember that. Which? Can you run yours? Okay, so it's not showing the paging?
Yeah.
Is that it? Okay, so is paging the control already? Where did you find the view? Can you show me the view that has the paging? Show me the view.
View page, I think.
Yeah, the view that has the paging, that has the list view. Okay, so that list, product list. Okay. Okay, this is the paging info, model of pagination list. So, okay, so this is step number 10, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me have a look here. Step number 10. Did you add? Let's have a look here. Layout. The view imports. Did you add in the view imports? Did you add this
Add to tab helper?
to the view imports?
I'm missing this, right?
Tag help, yeah, but I don't know if they are necessary right now.
Maybe I can download the code and see.
Yeah, actually, I'll be providing soon all the codes, and then you can have a look. But most likely, you're missing something minor there. Okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna, before we move on, I'm just gonna address a few questions that I saw from some of you. Maybe this is just an observation. So, actual web page is written by a template order, but works by a set routing options. Let me see here. So, actual web page is written by a template order. Yeah, the routing. It is not writing the page. It's not really writing the page yet. This is just figuring out who should respond to that. And by whom, I mean which controller, which action, okay? So it does not write the web page, okay? So I would not word like this. It's just figure out what are the parameters, what is the controller, what is the action. Why do we need the third map route? This is the one here. If, when it's never accessible in first place. Well, here's the thing. Maybe in that particular example it was not accessible, but you can still type in the URL. Of course, no user will type that in the URL, but maybe it's here just in case. Again, there's nothing. This does not make it mandatory for the rest of the application to use it. They are here just define a set of rules, just in case the rest of the application may use this or not. But of course, ideally we will only have rules here that will be readily applicable. Yeah, I get it. This one here, I don't see this happening here. So again, why are we doing this? Well, I can type in the URL, I can still perform this, okay? So again, this does not enforce how the system gets developed, you know? So I don't know if that answers, but again, if there's a rule that will never be used, you don't need to put it there. You don't have to add it, okay? Okay, so template. So template is the pattern that will display the view whenever the URL is matched. Okay, so let's just get the terminology right here, okay? I'm just trying to get the terminology right. View is way after, okay? View is after we figure out who's the controller, who's the action, okay? View as after, so I see people using those terms kind of intertwined. Action is one thing, view is another, okay? They may have the same name, they may not, okay? So template is the pattern. Yes, it's the pattern that will display the view. It will not display a view. It will call the controller and call the action. It's for the controller in the action to decide which view will be called, okay? But it's not deciding which view. It's deciding which controller in which action. Okay? Great. Okay. Let's move on here. Okay. So those are the 5 rules that we were talking about, okay? You can download, in case this is too low for you back there, you can download this presentation from eCentennial under week 6, and then you can see this better. But I'm going to open quiz. It's a set of 3 quizzes. Each quiz has 5 questions. It's all about matching. I'm going to give you a URL. You're going to tell me which one it matches. That's it. 3 sets of 5 questions each, and let's see how we are doing. Okay? So here is the code. Let's go to Nearpod. Let's enter that code, and I will try to keep it open here, but as I said, you can go to eCentennial. And I have it here somewhere. You can go to eCentennial under Contents, under week 6, and then week 6 navigation here. You can go to slide number, just so you can follow, because I don't think I will be able to keep all windows open here. You can find under slide 19. So here is the code. Here's the Nearpod code, okay? Let's have a look there. Actually, you know what? Because it's been too complicated here to keep everything open, I'm going to just insert text here. And this is the nearpods. Okay, that's the nearpod codes, okay? And those are the rules. Let's go through the first 5 questions, and we have a few minutes there to get this done. Nearpod codes, and these are the 5 rules. Okay. Okay, so let me just have a quick peek and see how we are doing here. Okay. Okay, let's see if we can get this right. So it is the same set of rules for each and every one. Let's have a look there. So /soccer, which one matches the best? Well, match first /soccer. So this is not a match because this doesn't have page, soccer. So right here, number 3. Okay? /product /list. So let's see. /product. Again, 1. Obviously not a match. 2. Not a match. 3. Not a match. We have 2 segments. Number 3 here has only 1 segment. Not a match either. Okay, 4. 4. So it's product. What is it again? Product /list, isn't it? Okay. So product /list does match this one and match this. So it will be product controller, action list, and ID is optional. So I didn't provide there. Okay? Okay? Again, this is the best time for us to sort out any questions you may have.
Both 4 and 5?
If it can be both?
Yes.
4 is only what? What is the template? Just the root. It's just the root. That's the only URL that it matches. Because it has nothing. It has an empty string. So it doesn't match anything. Yeah. The root of any application is just the root domain.
The root actually is product slash this, right?
Okay, you mean this part here?
The root goes to the product controller, right?
Yes.
And it goes to the visa.
Yes.
So why wouldn't the product slash this work? Because it's supposed to go to the product controller.
Correct, but that has to match one of the rules here. Just because we have product slash list, if you don't know which rule it fits, you cannot necessarily assume that this is a controller, this is the action. My point is that it has to match the templates that you are specifying. In slash product slash list, it does match this template here. Now, see, what you see under default is not the match of the URL. It's just what will happen when that match happens here in the templates. Like, for instance, on this one here, the only match will be the root one. So in this case, the control will be product, the action will be list, the product page will be number one. But my point is that the matching of the URL is not with defaults, it's with the template. Okay? The matching is done with the templates. Now, once we match the templates, defaults can help me. It's not, we can do things inside the templates itself, like the fifth one. We don't have defaults, we just have this. Because our template is already telling me which part is the controller, which part is the action. The templates, the defaults work mostly when you don't have a controller in the URL or you don't have an action in the URL, then you need someplace else to define that for us. And that's what the default is doing. If the URL matches this, then use controller product, use action list. Because in this URL, just slash chess, it doesn't tell me which action is, which controller is. Something else should tell me that. That's the default. Again, I just went on and on and on here. I don't know if it helped or not, or confused more. No? Okay. So we are here with the fifth one. Next one here. Okay, so here we go. Just slash, just root. Which one?
4.
Number 4. Okay? Just a slash 1. Again, nothing else in the URL. Okay, so we have home index. Which one? Home index. We cross this, 2 segments, we cross this. It's not empty, we cross this. Home is the controller.
I said none. I said none.
Okay. Let's have a look. So slash home slash index. Why would be none?
Because it's not don't use MVC default route. It's the customized. Unless there is like a home controller and index action. If
Okay,
that's the case,
okay.
then, yeah.
But let's look at rule number 5. Look at rule number 5.
You can be any controller in any action.
Yes.
An ID number.
Here, this is a placeholder here. It's just saying that the first segment is the controller, the second segment is the action, and the third one is optional. So this is home index. Yeah. So home matches the slot. This is a slot. Home matches here. Index matches here. And because this is optional, we don't need that. So it matches this.
But we don't have the home controller and the index controller.
He didn't necessarily say we were doing anything.
Okay. So you mean in the application, the controller? Okay. So that's what I'm trying to say as well. Forget about the rest of the application. I'm just talking about matching rules. I'm not judging yet whether we have a home controller, sorry, and by we have, I mean our controllers. Do we have a home controller in the application? In our case here for the sports store, we don't. But I'm not judging that. That is done. That is realized after this. The rule matches this one. Now, when I try to see, is there a home controller? Is there an action index? No. Then you're gonna get an error. But it matches this rule. So it's not a problem with the rule. It's a problem that the home controller doesn't exist yet. But it does match that one. Okay? But I get your point. It may sound a bit confusing because we really don't have, not that we do not have in the URL, we don't have a physical home controller. We don't have the physical index. But we have the rule. The rule is here. Whether it has it or not, well, that's a separate story. Okay? Okay, so this is 5. And finally, we have here /soccer/1. So /soccer.
None. Because there is no page.
So /soccer/1. The closest one that, I mean, this is not because it has just one segment, and /soccer/1 we have 2 segments. So it's not a match here. It's not a match with this because we don't have page. This has page, this has page, it doesn't have page. Okay, so we cross the first 3. This is the route, the root. It's not a match. And this one here, let me see here. Okay, but here's the thing. It won't match this because action cannot be a number. You cannot have a method called a number. Okay, so yeah, it would not. We could try this and see if this would be a fit, but I'm assuming that this would not work. Okay, so I would say none on that one. Okay, so I still have two more quizzes, but to be quite honest, I would like to get started with our assignments, because again, I'm not sure about timing, how things will flow with the assignment review. So let's pause this for now. Let's get started with the assignments. Now, while I'm one-on-one with each one of you individually, the rest of you will be progressing. And here's what you should get going. If you go under source, I have also created now Sports Store Chapter 9, where I have uploaded already part 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Chapter 9. So what I would like to ask you is, keep moving forward with Chapter 9. You can find the video playlist under week 5. Here's the playlist. Keep going from step 5 on. So you can just come here to the playlist, go to step number 5, use as a starting point, part number 4, so you can progress on part number 5. Does that make sense? Okay? So again, you can get part number 4 as your starting point to progress on part 5 and keep going there as I go through and I'm able to address. Let me see if there is any questions here, lingering. Okay, perfect. Okay, that's fine. Great. So let's flow that. I was thinking of going alphabetically, but if there's anyone that is in a rush and needs to leave, I can give priority to you. You mentioned that? 2 of you? Okay, perfect. And then after that, I'll go in the order of first name or last name, something like that.